It's showtime. Hello, everybody. Let's get a bit of light on. It's me, Jonathan MS Pearce, with another ATP Geopolitics video, a live stream where I thought I'd just do a live because why not? I've got a lot to talk about. I don't like the fact that that's oh well, it's all a bit of a mess. A lot to talk to you about concerning military aid to Ukraine. I'm going to do my military aid update video, but also I just wanted a big old chat anyway. And I want to highlight the campaign that we're running at the moment because I've not done enough about that. Poor old Claire and Ivan. It'd be great if we see them later. I've offered them to come on, but I don't know what time it is and what they're doing in wherever they are from Kharkiv, Ukraine. They are an incredible campaign fundraising entity. I can't think of the word. Charity, that's it. An incredible charity that does an amazing job for supplying vehicles to the front lines in Ukraine. And we drove 3 of the vehicles we fundraised for them out there last time, myself and a bunch of awesome people, and Jonathan Fink, and we drove those vehicles out to Lviv and then went on to Kiev, and it was fantastic to see the Kharkiv Ukraine set up and all the amazing things that they do. Let's just remind you of their of the campaign that we're running. Here it is. It's the Easter Paisanki one. The goal is 220,000 euros among all of these incredible channels. Now, I've been a bit slack here. I went away for a week and haven't really officially launched this. So take this as an official launch of the campaign. So we have Ukraine Matters, Sukhomimos, the Shills. They've obviously done a really good job there. Mikado Media as well. And Rick the Ukrainian, as per usual, Renegade Chungus and Kanti Luden, as well as Silicon Curtain. And here we are in 8th place, but haven't really shouted about it. ATP Geopolitics, War Translated, and all these other great advocates for Ukraine doing their bit. So it would be great if you could help out with that. And this fundraiser today will be starting, hopefully kickstarting that. So if you can, please drop down to the link in the description below, ATPGEO.com/donate. That should take you to here, to this page. You can go and watch some of these videos that give you the details of where these trucks are going. At the moment, we're fundraising for 2 trucks. I might put that down to 1 truck, depending on how we do. I've just been really slow on this one because I've been away, and that's kind of messed everything up. So I feel a bit bad for Kharkiv Ukraine. It's just real life got in the way, so sorry about that. But there's a great donors wall at the bottom here. Really good to read all of these great comments. So thank you to all the people who have done as much as they have done. It's really, really fabulous. Thank you. And we'll read through some of those, I guess, a little bit later. We're going to start though with well, first of all, let's start with saying hello to you guys. Really good to have you here. And already, thank you to Tom Rogulik, who says from Australia, almost bedtime down under. Oh, Struth, mate. Never too late, eh? Hey, look, Tom. I really appreciate you being here, mate. You are totally welcome to stay here past your bedtime, and we'll have some good time together. Good times. Crack open some stubbies. I like a slab of stubbies myself. And we'll make a night of it. Yeah, we'll try to stay awake as long as possible to see as much of the live stream as possible. Love all the amazing work, JP. Thank you, my good man. Really appreciate that. And sorry for butchering my Australian there. It's look, mate, I try my best. I really do. Okay, on with what I am supposed to be talking to you about, which is not ridiculously bad Australian lingo. Fair income, mate. And we're going to go to the military aid news. I just had to move my windows around and get things in the right place. So I'm going to throw my face over there and then throw that over here. It's interesting. When I went to that week in up north that I've just had with my family, I only had my laptop. And here I have a laptop and I have two other monitors, one in portrait where I can have 3 different programs open and another screen over there. And so used to working with 3 screens, you go away and just have your laptop. Oh my goodness, it's like living like a Neanderthal. But obviously, it's not really like that. First world problems, right? Okay, let's do this. So we're going to start with. Actually, I just wanted to start with this. This is not to do with military aid, but there's so much I'd love to talk about. Just coming across loads of things on the socials. Remember Steve Witkoff is saying, right, Russia's ready for peace in exchange for the 5 Ukrainian territories and willing to give away these 5 territories to Russia. Well, Zelensky's just come out and said only the people of Ukraine can speak about the territories of Ukraine. Representatives are discussing issues beyond their competence. Ouch. That is a kick in Steve Witkoff's ghoulies there. That is a very pointed statement that needs to be made, it has to be said. Right, okay. We're going to go to start with Mark Rutte and NATO. NATO has allocated more than 20 billion euros for Ukraine in 2025, according to Mark Rutte. I'm always a bit dubious about the way these are phrased. I guess it could be max 24 here, taking it from Associated Press and English not as first language. But I don't think NATO has allocated 20 billion. I think NATO countries have allocated 20 billion. And NATO themselves don't have the means. They don't have that. They don't have the equipment or the money. They are just a guiding organization that will be putting a lot of pressure on their member nations to help Ukraine. But I don't think it's going to be NATO that's giving 20 billion to Ukraine. It's going to be predominantly European nations, given that the US seems to have taken a step away from supporting Ukraine. Now, Zelensky has said that NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who was in Ukraine yesterday, so they talked about the security of Ukraine, our entire Europe and Euro-Atlantic relationship, about relations with all our partners in Europe and America. The main focus is on strengthening Ukraine's air defense. We expect that our agreements on air defense with partners in Europe and America will be implemented. Patriots are defensive weapons, and we are not just asking for Patriots. We are ready to buy them. And this is a purely political issue. Okay, more on that in a second, because it's looking like bad news on that front. But from Mark Rutte and NATO, he says most of the 7 promised Patriots from last June have been delivered or will arrive in Ukraine soon, according to Mark Rutte in an interview. He notes it's not always possible to deliver pledged systems quickly, but that support continues. Good news, and I hope Ukraine does get hold of those systems. That would be really, obviously, very useful. We hear from the EU. The EU countries have increased their support for Ukraine's defense by 15% compared to last year. And that's obviously in stark contrast to the US, that has reduced their assistance by, let's think, what's that number? What's that number that represents absolutely everything? Oh, yeah, 100%. They've reduced their assistance by 100%. At least it appears in kind of military aid terms. In 2023, Ukraine has received 20 billion euros from the EU, with total aid reaching 40 billion, including the USA. So where I was being very tongue-in-cheek, the idea is that there's 20 billion coming from the USA. But in terms of military aid, that's where I was talking about there. There appears to be no new aid forthcoming, even though, and this is a frustrating thing, there's $3.8 billion worth left of PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority, that has been apportioned by Congress. And we're going to come on to this in a second. The US aren't even selling Ukraine stuff at the moment. So this year, the EU alone has already allocated 23 billion. Wow. Sorry. And by the way, the American stuff there is from last year. So that's 20 billion last year. We're talking about this year. There is nothing, 100% reduction. And that is very significant. Now, the EU is considering the possibility of sending military advisors to Ukraine to work as part of a mission to train Ukrainian military personnel. That's according to the Hungarian foreign minister. Take what he says with a pinch of salt, but he could also be trying to drop Europe in it there by having some information that that you'd really rather that the Hungarians didn't have. Well, I don't know. This is a good time to bring in something I was going to talk about right at the end. Danish soldiers will be trained in Ukraine to learn combat techniques, including drone warfare, a new initiative by the Danish Armed Forces. It indicates Russia has warned that this brings Denmark deeper into the conflict and labels them as legitimate targets. Oh dear. But I actually think that's good. I think that's useful for Denmark as well. I think the training that other nations can get from Ukraine, not the other way around, I think is significant. Now, we're going to go on to Britain before we come back to Patriots and the US. Britain has sent Ukraine, or is sending Ukraine, a new tranche of military aid worth almost $1 billion. So UK Ministry of Economy and Finance announced a $990 million payment to Ukraine on the 14th of April, 2 days ago, marking the second of 3 planned installments. These are the frozen Russian assets, I believe. So it's not coming out of the UK budget. Reuters says the UK has allocated $990 million, actually 10 million extra there for shits and giggles, to Ukraine from frozen Russian assets. So here's the key point. The funds will be used to purchase air defense systems and artillery. Okay, keep that in your head, air defense systems. Okay, we also hear that a group of British members of parliament has proposed establishing a joint UK-Ukraine Defence Technology Centre to expedite arms deliveries to Ukraine, bolster domestic defence manufacturing, and generate employment within the UK. Like I've talked about before, this is not this is not a free lunch, right? So when any nation gives aid to Ukraine, it's a case of like, okay, what are the intentions for this aid? What are the objectives? There will be strategic objectives, military political objectives to do with that 4D game of chess going on in the world. Then you can pare it down to other things being achieved, such as employment, such as stimulating your own economy. We talk about a lot of that aid from the US being really translated into money going into the US economy, buying arms either to replenish US stocks with the latest version and sending obsolete stuff to Ukraine, or building stuff in the US to send to Ukraine. Well, the same here. This initiative suggests allocating a portion of the UK's annual £3 billion military aid to Ukraine towards producing military equipment domestically. Absolutely. I mean, I can't believe it's taken this long to sort out, ensuring direct delivery to Ukrainian forces while simultaneously replenishing the UK's own defence stockpiles. Yes, that's what the US has been doing for 3 years. I don't know what the previous government and indeed this government for the last 5 months, I don't know why it's taken this long, but anyway. This proposal aligns with the UK's broader strategy to support Ukraine amid ongoing Russian aggression. In 2025, the UK is committed to providing £4.5 billion in military aid to Ukraine. Wow. This support includes a £2.26 billion loan under the G7 Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Scheme, funded by profits from immobilized Russian assets. They've just given $990 million of that. As we just heard, the aid package encompasses the procurement of air defense systems, drones, and essential equipment, production efforts involving UK companies such as BAE Systems, Sheffield Forge Masters. They're making the barrels up in Sheffield. Notably, artillery barrel production has resumed in Yorkshire. That is Sheffield Forge Masters, after nearly 2 decades to meet Ukraine's defense needs. Furthermore, the UK and Ukraine have signed a defense industrial support treaty, facilitating up to £3.5 billion in UK export finance guaranteed loans. This agreement enables Ukraine to acquire military equipment from UK companies. Again, here's a loan, strings attached. All the money that I keep reporting you going to Ukraine, almost all of it will have strings attached. So this is either very low rate loan, but it's a loan, so we're going to get paid back with interest, even though the interest is very low. Or here's a loan and favorable interest rates, but also you have to use that money to buy stuff from us. So here's £3.5 billion. Thank you very much. We'll have that £3.5 billion back, and we'll give you the stuff that we're going to be making with that money. This agreement enables Ukraine to acquire military equipment from UK companies, thereby strengthening the defence industries of both nations. The proposed joint defence technology centre represents a strategic effort to enhance Ukraine's military capabilities while simultaneously advancing the UK's defence sector and economic growth. Okay, so that's all the UK stuff. Now we're going to go on to Patriots, Zelensky, and the US. So Zelensky said in that 60 Minutes interview that Ukraine is ready to buy 10 Patriot systems from the US for $15 billion. or that's come out since then. Ukraine is willing to explore multiple formats, including purchase, licensing, or renting Patriot air defense systems, according to Zelensky. Okay, so you're thinking if you are the United States of America, who have otherwise been allies of Ukraine and now somewhat not quite sure where they stand, but you'd still be surely in the line of thinking that, yeah, okay, so we're not going to give you this stuff, but if you want to buy this stuff and we turn a profit on making it and that puts money in the coffers of our defense military industrial complex, then yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. Let's sell this stuff to the Trump refuses $50 billion deal. He does not want to supply Ukraine with weapons, even for money. And that's according to Die Bild. Okay, German tabloid newspaper, take it with a pinch of salt. But it's kind of what he hinted at the other day. Now, I don't know if this is taking that statement from Trump the other day, where the implication was he wasn't, yeah, they're always wanting to buy missiles. Yeah, okay, well, are you going to sell them to them? Or whether this is a separate source that they found. Despite Ukraine's urgent need for Patriot systems and missiles for them, the Trump team is not even interested in the possibility of selling these complexes. This is incredibly, incredibly bad news. And I have to say, this is absolutely terrible news. Absolutely terrible news. Well, let's go on to this next bit and you'll get a sense. Pentagon officials recently questioned an ally about continuing arms supply to Ukraine, an inquiry that was brushed off, according to The Economist. Some Trump aides reportedly expressed being fed up with Europe's Ukraine support. So not only do they not want to sell stuff to Ukraine, but they actually don't want Europe to be helping Ukraine. The Trump administration are not on the side of Ukraine in any way, shape, or form anymore. They're fulfilling some things still that they were doing anyway. There's nothing new that's going to be added, and they will be trying really hard to stop other things from happening that were previously happening. I'm sure intelligence sharing is going to be under a lot of pressure. I'm fairly sure that people like Donald Trump Jr., Tucker Carlson, Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, all these people that are either in the Trump administration or adjacent, Elon Musk, David Sachs, all of the people around that whole hornet's nest of human beings, apart from maybe, Mike Walls to a degree, Marco Rubio to a degree, but these guys are finding it hard to voice their own opinions and reflect their own consciences. And Keith Kellogg, you move those people aside, you've got this hornet's nest of evil people, and then people who are easily persuaded, like Donald Trump himself. Donald Trump doesn't like Zelensky because of 2019. Donald Trump doesn't like Ukraine. But if he had the right people around him, I think he would be convincible to support Ukraine if it was argued that it would be in the best interests of Donald Trump. The problem here is that those people around him are all horrible, horrible human beings. And they don't want the US to help Ukraine. They don't want to even sell weapons to Ukraine. And they're trying to put pressure on Europe to stop helping Ukraine. Honestly, you need a freaking revolution in the United States at the moment. I did my breaking news update this morning on Doge exfiltrating data from the National Labor Relations Board, and that then being either Doge being compromised by Russia, or Russia riding in on coattails of Doge's inept handling of that. And that's terrible. Just that alone should be massive news for the next week in the United States. But everything is happening the whole time. There's crazy stuff going on, and none of it is good for democracy. None of it is good for transparency. None of it is good for anti-corruption. None of it is good. It's only good for oligarchs, billionaires, grifters, corrupt people, and Russia, and arguably China. Even though there's a massive trade war with China, and we'll talk about this at the end because I've got quite a lot to say about that. But even that is driving nation. They're war with China is actually aiding China, because China is now seeing the EU and Europe being driven away from the United States. It's getting all of its long-term strategic objectives achieved. It's now doing trade talks with Japan and South Korea. It's now in talks with Vietnam. Xi Jinping is on the walk around Asia, hoovering up all of the nations that the US have been trying to get away from China, the Chinese sphere of influence, like Vietnam. These places are now being forced back to China because Donald Trump doesn't have a clue what he's doing. He literally has no idea about macroeconomics and global interactions in the domain of economics. Just, it's incredible. And so, you know, China and Russia are loving what the US is doing at the moment. And at the moment, sadly as well, that means that Ukraine is suffering. I was saying to Pierre earlier today that, you know what, if the US have been fully backing Ukraine since January the 20th, right, then they could have put an end to this war. Trump could have come in and said, right, we're going to screw down the sanctions on Russia. We're going to make them really hurt. And then we're going to double down on weapons deliveries to Ukraine. And we are going to force Russia to negotiations. Instead, they've given Russia as much elbow room as they possibly can while screwing over Ukraine. And it's absolutely horrendous. And I'm sorry, I've got to the point where I have no truck for people who are trying to defend Donald Trump, just in any area, but particularly Ukraine. US lawmakers push a new aid for Ukraine and tougher sanctions on Russia, according to Reuters. Okay, that's interesting. But who are these lawmakers? Oh, they're Democratic lawmakers predominantly. Now, I did hear a hint last night that there are some Republicans who are now whispering about crossing the aisle and caucusing with Democrats. If that starts to happen, that is huge. That's what should have happened already. I want to know if those rumors have any justification, any kind of solid backing. But I've been waiting to hear things like, I'd imagine it'd be someone like, Ron Bacon, people who are really strongly supportive of Ukraine, but also don't want to see the US Constitution be ripped apart and the democratic institutions be undermined. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of senators and representatives who would be, I think, considering such a move. They just need to come together and see the support from those across the aisle. But yeah, this would be great but I'm sure it would rely on, and here's why I'm talking about this kind of politically here. So something like this would rely on Mike Johnson, the majority speaker, to be able to do that. But as we saw with the 7 months where you had Biden as a president, and you had a 50-50 Senate, but there was a majority for the Republicans in the House of Representatives, and Mike Johnson refused to put the bill to the floor for military aid to Ukraine, and that lasted 7 months, right? And that was because Donald Trump was ordering that. Okay, so we got the similar situation where I'm sure Mike Johnson would just refuse to put that to the floor. Now, the rumor I heard last night is if enough, and I don't know the rules about Congress enough to know how this works, but I was hearing that if there are Republicans who caucus with the Democrats, then it means that Hakeem Jeffries would become the majority speaker. And they would do that so that they could start passing things to protect the Constitution and the institutions. And that's what those Republicans would be aiming to do. So I don't know whether the majority speaker is based upon registered lawmakers, or whether if you just start caucusing officially with the other side, whether that means the majority speaker would then come from Democrats. So anyway, that was what I was hearing. And then a bill like that could get passed, because it would probably get passed in the Senate. You would hope, and if all the Democrats back that, then there is hope, but it would require people crossing the aisle. And again, it's only rumors that I've heard. Now, moving on to back to military aid, Spain's Technova is to produce Ukrainian Jura and Kozak armored vehicles. This is fascinating because what we normally see is licensed production of other Western equipment inside Ukraine. So Ukroprom or those that who are, I don't know, those Rheinmetall coming in and BAE Systems and setting up shop in Ukraine and building stuff. This is interesting because you've got Ukrainian kit being made under license outside of Ukraine, and so there seems to be a two-way street here, and that's really good because the license, that money, there would be money going to Ukraine, of course. And I don't know whether all of that equipment will end up going to Ukraine or whether Spain would be like, yeah, we want to make this stuff because it's good enough. We're going to make it in Spain. And actually, we're going to provide some of these for ourselves. The company plans to manufacture 3 variants of vehicles: a medical evacuation vehicle, a troop carrier, and a vehicle for special operations. Interesting news there. Now, we're going to get on to Taurus. There are quite some differing claims coming out about Taurus, particularly today. So Merz, Friedrich Merz, the incoming chancellor, who is now just kind of finalizing the coalition agreement. I think there already is a massive coalition agreement. I say massive as in quite a big document, I think, between the SDP, SPD, and the CDU, CSU. So Merz's party is optimistic about Germany's new coalition backing Taurus for Ukraine, was what was being reported yesterday. And then we had here Tim White saying Ukraine's ambassador to Germany, Mikhaev, puts into perspective scare stories over recent failures in German weaponry in the arena of war. So if you remember the other day, there was a presentation that said actually Leopard 1A5s don't have strong enough armor. Leopard 2s that are breaking down too often, and well, all the main battle tanks really are, but it's all about logistics line being too difficult, and so they're generally being used as supportive artillery, indirect fire. Then you've got issue with this, issue with that. Panzer 2000 is too sensitive for this, and there are all these kind of negative points about the German equipment that was being thrown into the front line. There are a few things that came out really well, but anyway, here is a bunch of screenshots of the article with the ambassador to Germany, and there are a few things of note here. So we have, Taurus missiles. Do you think Merz will bring a commitment to Taurus missiles with him during a potential visit when he goes to Ukraine, which is thought to be the first place he's going to visit? The need is still there. The answer is, I'm sure our military would be very successful in engaging certain Russian military targets with these weapons. The Taurus has enormous penetration power, capable of destroying command centers in bunkers or underground ammunition depots, for example. And then, regardless of the need, do you expect Merz to keep his word? As a diplomat, I always expect that one keeps one's word. Of course, we will discuss the issue, but please allow me to do so not through the media, but directly with the future chancellor. Okay, Scholz justified his blockade of the Taurus with the fear that delivery could provoke Russia and escalate the war. And the answer is, fear is not a good advisor in war. The Russians benefit greatly from the fact that fear prevents them from taking some bold steps. It's easy to hide behind the word escalation here in Germany. The discussion about a possible escalation has taken place before the delivery of every weapon system, whether it's a Marder infantry fighting vehicle, Leopard main battle tank, or the Panzer 2000. The constant message was that Germany would now definitely become a party to the war. That's Russian propaganda. The Russians have been waging war against the West for a long time. Okay. Then they said a few days ago there were all these reports that Germany delivered, weapons that are somewhat unusable to Ukraine. He said, by no means are these weapons unusable. German weapons are among the best we have. They are far superior to Russian weapons. They've proven themselves very well. They save lives every day, of course. Under war conditions, clues emerge about what's wrong with a weapon and what needs to be changed. There is an exchange of information about this between Germany and Ukraine. This is not a scandal, but rather a process of improvement. And I think that's broadly accurate, right? Which is to say that, a Panzer Howitzer 2000 isn't probably used to being used, fired that many times a minute, right, over like months and months and months. And so, when there were reports that they're having to replace the barrels and this and that, you said, well, But also those systems might not be used to such a rigorous, that they won't have been tested in such a rigorous environment as an actual battlefield against the Russians. And you will find that there will be areas that they need to improve. And that's a value of nations giving weapons to Ukraine, is they get this feedback and they improve their own weapon systems. What else do we have? I don't think there's anything else that's worth noting from that article. Then we hear today, SPD General Secretary Matthias Miersch says the future CDU SPD coalition should decide together on Taurus for Ukraine, hinting intelligence may sway Merz against it. Ex-Chancellor Scholz from the SPD also opposed sending Taurus and systematically blocked the decision for months. So then there is a hint here from Knoll Reports that, and I guess the point is that if you're Friedrich Merz and you're an opposition leader, you can say, yeah, we're going to give Taurus, yeah, we're going to give Taurus, but you're not getting intelligence briefings from your MOD and from, people in the know. And then once you get into power, they go, oh, by the way, if we do this, this will happen. And actually, this is a problem with doing that. And actually, the Ukrainians can't use this. And there might be reasons that he's not privy to at the moment or hasn't been privy to. So it's easy to promise things. And then exactly like what happened with the Storm Shadow. So Keir Starmer said, yeah, we're going to give Storm Shadow. And then we found out that it turns out that I don't think they could fire the Storm Shadow without targeting from the US. And if the US were refusing to give that targeting into Russia, Keir Starmer offering the Storm Shadow to be used by the Ukrainians into Russia was kind of impotent. And everyone was like complaining about the UK and Keir Starmer, but it was not our fault. It was not Starmer's fault. He was like, I want to give the Storm Shadow to Ukraine to use however they like. He publicly said that, and then his own MOD had to not reprimand him but quietly correct him, because it turns out the Americans did have the last say in that. And it could be that there are other things happening with the Taurus that means that it's more difficult than Friedrich Merz saying, yeah, we're going to get Taurus, no problem. But I really, really hope they do get them, and lots of them, or at least as many as they can possibly give. German defense giant Rheinmetall and MAN Trucks are reportedly exploring a joint venture to turn Volkswagen's Osnabrück facility into a military vehicle manufacturing plant, something we'd heard about previously. The pair are in active high-level talks with the Volkswagen leadership, and that's probably brought on a lot by Volkswagen being in a bit of trouble. I don't think they reacted particularly well to electric vehicles and Chinese electric vehicle dominance as well at the moment, and they've been behind the curve. And as a result, I think the German automotive industry, it's not just that, lots of reasons that they've been struggling the last few years, and there are idle Volkswagen plants that could easily be put to good use by military concerns. Okay, what else do we have? A university medical center, Schleswig-Holstein, based in Kiel in Germany, has donated protective masks, antiseptics, bandages, filters for artificial respiration, as well as a set of medicines like antipyretics and antibiotics to a medical institution in Kherson Oblast. This is great news. And this is just one example, I'm sure, of many of these kind of individual institutions throughout Europe and throughout the world helping Ukraine in ways that kind of often goes under the radar. And it's this consistent aid that is, I think, really, really good to see. Now, Japan has pledged an additional 30 assorted JSDF, so it's their defense forces, their actual army vehicles, to Ukraine, including additional Type 73-2 infantry mobility vehicles. Sadly, the exact makeup of the so far 131 pledged vehicles has not been disclosed, but that's really good. So Japan coming up with the goods there. Really good to see this small child helping out there. So that's great. I shouldn't be heightist. That's really good for Japan there to help. And we hear that Israel has been blocking transfers of any weapons of Israeli origin going to Ukraine, even weapons European armies have already bought years ago. So they are an even less reliable supplier than the USA. Wow. Now, I don't know too much about the details there, but Israel are evidently not as friendly to Ukraine as we would like them to be. Quite possibly compromised by either the USA or Russia or both. We know that Israel voted with the US under a lot of pressure from the US at the UN when they voted against that resolution, along with like Russia and all these dodgy countries. When we first had the most serious indication that the US had changed sides. It could be that Israel is doing what the US wants, or it could be that Israel are doing what the Russians want. Okay, now onto a few things from Ukraine. A new surface drone, the Katran, equipped with containers for launching kamikaze drones, is in service with the RVC. This is another kind of drone, unmanned sea vessel here from the Ukrainians. Drone. So we saw that very futuristic looking one the other day, and here's one that looks more like just a general boat that's obviously been fully automated, and it can then launch kamikaze drones. I have done, you won't have seen it yet, but I did my next video in the backlog of Andrew Perpetual loss lists. And that was going, so yesterday I did 10 loss lists. Unless you're a geek like me, it's very boring. But for someone that likes looking at spreadsheets of lost equipment, it's obviously very cool. And I went through 10 sheets yesterday, and I've got my next video I've already recorded. That'll come out a bit later, of the next 9 sheets. The last sheet on that, so the 19th sheet of his 19-day backlog, well, actually, he's got a 40-day backlog, but he's released for 19 days. That last sheet included the montages of the Sea Baby Magura V5 unmanned surface vehicles, those boat drones, that then had those aerial drones that take off and then use the boat as a repeater. So you can drive the boat hundreds of kilometers away, and then you have the aerial drones take off, FPV drones that go and hit these things 10 to 15 kilometers from the coast, and then that boat can return. Now, that last sheet of the 19 included the montage of, there's several montages, I think, of stuff that had been destroyed. And the value of that stuff, you had Pantsir S1s, you had Nebos, you had Nobians, like radar arrays, you had Castor E2s. Each of these are like, some of these are like, well, that's 50 million, that's 60 million, that's 15 million, that's the, you know, and it's not just the cost of these things to replace, it's actually whether they can replace them. It's like whether, yeah, okay, in normal times that might cost 60 million quid, but do you have the components to be able to make that now? And if you can't make it, then it can cost $1 billion or it cost 20p. It doesn't really matter. You can't make it. So and on that list, that last list was like, well, actually, as difficult as some of those lists were for Ukraine have lost a lot of equipment, I think, from Kursk. That last sheet was like, well, that blows everything out of the water, because the value of all that kit was stupendous. Anyway, just thought I'd bang on about that for a little bit. Right, a few more Ukrainian things. So, as I said the other day, since the beginning of 2025, 420,000 drones have been delivered to the front. Also, 1.52 million drones have already been contracted this year. I also wonder if that's an accurate number, because I never know whether the Ukrainian procurement agency, so the Defense Procurement Agency, knows what each individual unit is doing in terms of fundraising themselves and getting stuff themselves from individual charities, or just from buying drones off the internet themselves. So I reckon you could probably add an absolute ton of drones to that in terms of what different charities are doing that the Defense Procurement Agency don't know about. So yeah. But anyway, 420,000 drones since the beginning of 2025, and that probably was the stats from a couple of weeks ago or something. So although if you divide that along the entire front line, it might not look like that many. That's a lot of drones, and it's no doubt more than that. Ukraine has developed a new BARS missile drone capable of striking deep into Russian territory, according to the BBC. In terms of its characteristics, it's similar to the Peklo missile. That means hell in Ukrainian. These missile drones, the Peklo ones, we know they've been used, well, at least we've been told they've been used successfully. BARS is a medium range strike weapon of 700 to 800 kilometers. It's all about scale. It's about making, you know, really you want to be firing 20 of these a day, 20 of these a night, 50 a night, you know, whatever. Not like one every few days. It's about scale, 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 and just hammering the crap. So we're hearing that although both sides have a different interpretation of when the ceasefire on energy infrastructure ends. Is it Russians are claiming it ends tomorrow? The Ukrainians are claiming it ends in like on the 25th or something like that. Anyway, there's a difference. But I'm wondering whether you might then start seeing an absolute. So it could be that Russians have been stockpiling. You know, we've seen less of the drones being used in the last week or so. It could be that they're stockpiling maybe 100 drones a day to wait for the end of the ceasefire, and then you've got like thousands of drones getting whacked into Ukraine at energy infrastructure. And it could be that Ukrainians are likewise waiting to hit oil refineries and depots and energy infrastructure themselves. And that as soon as that ceasefire ends, it's going to be total carnage. Ukraine tests over 70 land drones. Ground robots from 50 manufacturers are being evaluated for range, payload capacity, and electronic warfare performance in ongoing trials. Wow, that's a lot of UGVs being trialed there. Okay, and then on to a few things from Russia, and then we'll get to some of your comments. Thank you so much. I'm sure you're all being wonderful in the live chat there. Okay, Israeli tools. So I talked about Israel already. Israeli tools power Putin's war machine. Several Israeli companies supplied high-precision metalworking tools to Russia's defense sector last year, 2024, despite sanctions and Israel's neutral stance on the Ukraine war. Over $10 million worth of equipment, including drills and super hard alloys, reached Russian military manufacturers via intermediaries in China and Uzbekistan. So it details a bunch of these shipments going from Israel to Russia. Around half of the Israeli tools reach Russia via re-export through China and Uzbekistan, with the Uzbek firm Tech Project key in routing ISKAR gear to Russia importer Resurs Profi. And that's the Insider and United 24 doing the work on that. And that's tools for Russia's S-300 and Su-35 production coming from Israel. We hear that, well, Newsweek reports that over the course of 18 months, North Korea has sent Russia more than 15,800 containers of ammunition. Analysts identified at least 64 shipments from North Korea to Russia between August 2023 and March 2025, providing the Russian army with approximately 4.2 to 5.8 million units of ammunition. Absolutely insane. So some people not understanding what a quid is. A quid is a pound sterling. Although it says some Australians call their dollars a quid too. But interesting. So anyway, yeah, a quid. I mean, I thought that was universal knowledge, but of course, not everyone's inside my head. So yeah, 10 quid is 10 bob. 10 bob is 10 pounds sterling. Yeah. So 10 quid. Anyway, moving on, fiber optic cable unwinding machines, and you can see these are actually Chinese machines, have increased the speed of winding fiber optics onto spools for Russian FPVs at a rate of 500 meters per minute. The Shanghai-based Sino-Russo Group PGI Technology claims they are moving to a 24/7 schedule. Now, I presume this isn't respooling spent fiber optics from fiber optic drones that have been blown up and you need to wind back their cable to use again. This looks like brand new cabling, but just shows that Russia and China are working closely on that. We hear that Kiev is not ruling out North Korean participation in Russia's assault on Sumy and Kharkiv oblasts, expecting some attacks from the north. Ukraine does not rule out the possibility that Russia will deploy North Korean troops in the offensives against the northeastern Sumy and Kharkiv oblasts, a Ukrainian intelligence spokesperson has said. And of course, the question is, what will the international reaction be to that? So the North Koreans have been used, but they've been used only really in, at least the personnel in Russia as the Ukrainians attacked into Kursk Oblast. And there's that bilateral agreement between the two nations that looks rather like a Article 5 military agreement, so that North Koreans could be used to defend, at least according to that piece of paper, to defend the Russians in Russia. But if they use North Koreans to attack into Ukraine, then that's a whole different kettle of fish. And I think there hasn't been as massive condemnation of North Korea because they've only been used in Russia. If that changes, I would hope there's a huge reaction from Europe and the United States, but you can't tell with the United States. Unfortunately, we can talk about an evolution about the successful training of North Korean military. The spokesman noting that Pyongyang's forces have adopted Russian tactics of using drones and electronic warfare systems. Yes, troubling times with regard to the North Koreans. They are being particularly good allies of Ukraine. Now, I don't know too much about this video. I don't really know. This is a video from Jay in Kiev that purports to be Russians being pulled from Vladivostok. So Vladivostok is on the eastern seaboard of Russia, right over the other side near China. And these, I presume, are Russians from that area pouring into Ukraine. Putin is only escalating while the EU talks about money, and Trump is merely a Kremlin PR agent. So he is making the intimation that there are huge numbers of Russians lining up, ready to join the war effort in Ukraine, flying from Vladivostok and then getting over to nearer Ukraine and then traveling into Ukraine, where you see, I don't know, road signs of near Ukraine or whatever. There. Moscow. That would be super worrying as well. Okay, just to remind you, please go and check out carforukraine.com. You can go to my link in the description below, atpgeo.com/donate, and it'll take you to this page where you can help support the Easter Paisanki ATP Geopolitics campaign for fundraising for 2 trucks for the front line in Ukraine. And you can go and check out who will be using these trucks. The videos are on that page. That'd be really wonderful. I would appreciate that an awful lot. Right, let's get back to chatting with you guys about the war in Ukraine and other assorted goodies. Once I find out what I'm doing here. Right, okay. So thank you very much. Let's go and check out some of your questions and super chats. I've already mentioned Tom. Really appreciate that. I hope you're still awake with us. Late night for you in Australia. Stephen Bendal, the great Stephen Bendal from Norway. Thank you very much for gifting those ATP Geopolitics memberships. You are a legend. As are the 2 Johnnies, 3 Johnnies, shall I say. Myself included. I can't say I'm great, but you are great, Johnny Nebregard from Norway. Thank you for your assistance, and thank you to Johnny Christensen from Denmark. Some Nordic love, some Scandinavian love there. Thank you. Now, what now? Stinky says JP's first live was on the 5th of April 2023. It makes me happy to see the same faces on these lives from so far back. That's a really good point, and I am honoured that many of you guys have stuck it out and are still hanging out with us as a team. And yeah, brilliant. You guys are amazing. Thank you. Okay, Richard Bennett. We have some ATP Geopolitics memberships gifted. Thank you. Really appreciate you all the time, mate. Tom Roglic again. The US needs a military coup ASAP. There's an interesting point in this, and I have discussed this before, which is if you have a military who have been operating as the US military has done for 20, 50, 70 years, but some of those people, I don't know, might be career military people now who have been, they're like 4-star generals, 3-star, 2-star, whatever. These are up and down the hierarchy, people that have been in the military for decades. They know that Russia are the bad guys. It's in their DNA. And it's obvious from the strategizing and from the activity these guys are doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, right? So no one's under any illusions about who the bad guys are. You're supporting Ukraine. Everyone understands we're supporting Ukraine because it's kind of a proxy war against, not in a pejorative sense, but sort of a proxy war against Russia. So we're helping out Ukraine. And then the Trump administration comes in and essentially changes sides. And I just wonder what these people must be thinking. and whether there is this desire to keep on doing things under the radar, not reporting it up the hierarchy, so that the military can still support Ukraine, but Trump just gets given reports that might not indicate that enough, or if they're told that no, you can't do this anymore and you've got to stop this. Yeah, they're very good at following orders, but what kind of resentment is there amongst the American military? How are they able to show any resentment, or do they just toe the party line and say, yep, we've been told to do this, we've got to get on with it, we're not the ones that do the thinking, they did the thinking? Except that it appears that Donald Trump and his administration are completely compromised. So I wonder what tensions there are going on between the politicians and the military people within the Trump administration. Axel, thank you very much, Axel Pro. Happy birthday, first Army Corps Ukraine Azov. Yes, I'm not sure what that pertains to, but I'll wish him happy birthday as well. I don't know, maybe they were formed on the 16th of April on some year. Thank you very much for the super chat, by the way. Daryl Thomas, thank you very much. Really, really generous of you. Thanks for your assistance, my good man. Appreciated. And Henrik No, thank you for gifting an ATP Geopolitics membership. That's super, super generous. We have a comment from Goose Springsteen. Good to have you back, Goose. It's been a long time. No insightful comments or good questions today, JP. Please just give me a secular prayer for my stage 4 man flu ahead of my night shift. It's tough. Yeah, it is. I hear it's worse than labor. I'm pretty sure it is worse than childbirth. So, good luck with that, Goose. My thoughts and secular prayers are with you. Yes. So, what should we talk about now? I wanted to just mention a little bit about what's going on with trade wars with China, because everything that appears to be going on with the American administration at the moment, like I said earlier, it seems to be a case of giving the keys of power away to other people. As the US is saying, America first, we want to put America first. And the idea is, of course, America is going to eventually be in the strongest position possible. But I think strength in the modern era comes from alliances more than it comes from individual imperialistic ideals. Because, if the US is going to become more insular, onshore all of its manufacturing and eschew trading with other people because they see a trade. The fundamental problem is seeing a trade deficit as a bad thing. Trade deficits are, I would say, more likely a reflection of the richness of a country. Like if you're a rich country like the United States, you're going to be buying more from Vietnam than Vietnam are going to be buying from you. To expect there to be a trade surplus with Vietnam is entirely ludicrous. Right, and it shows you don't understand trade. Trade is where both of you see value in this. I'm going to buy this from you, and I will pay this for you because even if it's a monopoly and you're screwing me over, I still need that. There's still a value for me having that, and that value is higher than or equal to the money I'm giving you for it. So even if you're getting done over and paying well over the odds, you're not paying well over the odds because you are valuing that thing is worth that, even though you don't want to pay that. So even if you give me, sounds ridiculous, but like houses don't have objective value, right? So when you say, what's that house worth? That house is worth whatever someone's willing to pay for it. Or the same with anything in the world. I'm using a house as an example. So things are only worth what you're willing to pay for it. So even if you're being screwed over and you feel you have to pay this thing that's over the odds for what you're buying, that's what you are buying, and there's a value exchange going on there. And of course, you prefer to pay half the amount for it, but you're still giving that money over to pay for it because you're screwed over and you necessarily need that thing. So, it's still worth that. Anyway, point is that's trade, right? So every time the US or any country buys, or any human, any entity buys something or someone else, that is, you are both getting value out of that. I'm receiving the money I want for selling that to you, and you're receiving the good for the money that you've given me. And we both kind of walk away happy. Now, sometimes when neither, one side might not be as happy as the other, and you might be making things at a loss, and there are some confounding variables and things, but essentially there's that principle. The US having a trade deficit is not a bad thing. It's showing that, hey, we are so rich that we can go around buying more stuff than we sell to you. And it's all right because we got a load of money because we're one of the richest countries in the world. Now, we can talk about $34 trillion worth of national debt and blah, blah, blah. But as long as the American dollar is the international currency and is a reserve currency, and American could go around doing this stuff, right? If you're just looking at trade deficits and then only in goods and not in services, where you've got trade surpluses in services quite often, it's just a completely bizarre way of looking at international trade. So the idea is, all right, that's really unfair. And Trump keeps talking about this being other nations cheating the US, and it's not. You're deciding to buy more stuff off them than they're deciding to buy off you. No one's cheating. There's no cheating involved. It's absolutely ridiculous. But if that's the way you see it, then you're just going to look at everyone else as an enemy, which is exactly what Trump does, which is you're all competitors and you're buying less off of us and we're buying off you, therefore screw you. And he goes to war on the whole world. And that will only benefit, it will benefit no one. No one benefits over this. But the question is, who benefits? Who is screwed over the least? And one of the big aspects of this global trade war is the tussle between the US and China. There's a really good video that's just come out by the Rest is Politics, Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell. And Alistair Campbell talks about when you look at the China-US trade war, and we heard with Zelensky that Trump was big on, like, you don't have any cards. You don't have the cards here. Well, actually, Alistair Campbell listed 10 cards that the Chinese had as an advantage over the US. One big one is that they are not a democracy. So are they politically more able to weather an economic storm? Yes, they are. Xi Jinping ain't going to get voted out. And an oppressive regime will be able to weather that storm. Will a democracy like the US be able to weather inflation going through the roof? No. And in fact, you've already seen among independents now, the latest poll is that there's no president in the history of America that's had worse polling data with independents at this stage of the presidency. He's underwater with independents. He's obviously underwater with Democrats, and he's increasingly underwater with Republicans. And there are Sarah Longwell, who's done loads of focus groups with swing voters and Trump voters, Biden Trump voters, and all these different combinations of different voters. And she's finding that there are a lot of people that are like saying, we voted on inflation, we voted on prices coming down, and nothing has come down, everything is going up, right? And if it's all about immigration and inflation, the economy, if 50% of why you voted for Biden, or a large component why you voted for Biden, is getting like blown out the water in the wrong direction, like, you're going to be in trouble. And Trump is going to be in trouble economically from what he is doing. And Alistair Campbell is talking about China holding 10 different cards, like talking about rare earth minerals and being at these choke points and being able to just restrict. It's not just about putting tariffs on stuff. It's like, we are not going to sell this to you. Like the planes, they're no longer going to build. Is it something like 8,600 Boeing planes were in the pipeline or over time or whatever? Like suddenly that's off the cards and off the menu, and so on and so forth. Like China rely on. So when the last trade war, I think China was importing 20% of their stuff from America, and now it's down to 12.8% of their stuff. In other words, China's weaned themselves off reliance on the US, or some degree of reliance on the US, in a way that the US hasn't done with China. And so therefore, China, that's one of the cards that China has way more cards that they can play. And I'll have to play you the whole portion of that interview where he just lists the 10 things. And it's like, right, that trade war between the US and China will be won by China. China will win that. They are outsmarting the US. And I don't think, if you are the world's most powerful economy, if you're relying on Peter Navarro to decide your economic strategy, then I think you're up shit creek, and you've got a really crappy Chinese paddle that's probably going to break because it's been sabotaged. I honestly don't. I think the US has picked a whole bunch of fights that they thought they could easily win, and Trump, in his kind of fallacy of invincibility, thought that he would be able to screw everyone over and demand this and that from them. And he's finding out that everyone's just going to go away and do deals with each other, and the US is going to be left out in the cold, and it's going to hurt his electorate, and he will get an absolute pounding in the midterm elections in November 2026, which can't come soon enough. Now, then the question becomes is, well, if he sees the writing on the wall there, would he start trying to take more and more power away from Congress? So at the moment, the reason why Congress is partly absent is that they're on recess at the moment, I think, and they're due back pretty soon. But correct me if I'm wrong there. But I get a sense that he is trying to just, as we know from what's called the unified executive theory, he's trying to concentrate the power in the three branches of American government. You've got the executive, the presidential office, the White House. You've got the Congress, and you've got the judiciary. And he's trying to ignore the judiciary, impeach judges, control the judiciary, and take power away from Congress, doing more executive orders, making emergency powers, so that he can decide things. So the invasion by the Venezuelans means that he can do X, Y, and Z without Congress's approval. And then, emergency economic situation, it means that he can concentrate power in himself. And this is classic, Viktor Orban's done this. People who do this, dictators do this very often, which is say, oh, we're in a national emergency, therefore I need more power. Governments did this quite a lot in the and kind of rightly so in the pandemic period, but it allowed them to also take the piss a bit and make unilateral decisions without their democratic institutions being consulted. And I think that's what you're seeing in the US. So the question is, if he sees the writing on the wall as losing Congress, as certainly losing the House of Representatives, maybe in a massive landslide, if it keeps going in this direction, then he might just say, right, the writing's on the wall, therefore we need to just make sure that the executive, that the White House has as much power as it can get. And that's only a move in the direction of dictatorship. But anyway, that's just my ramblings about what's going on there. I mean, when you look at literally everything that is happening in the American sphere at the moment, it is just deeply, deeply disturbing. Everything. When I look at my feeds, well, let's do that. Let's just randomly. I'm not prepared any of this. Let's just look at what's going on in the world that I'm hearing about. So first thing on my feed, Trump announces deals with more law firms for a combined $600 million. So this is Donald Trump doing deals with law firms that were otherwise critical or had cases that were critical against him over the last however many years, forcing them to do deals, do pro bono work for him, or they basically cease to exist. And you've had this capitulation of. So again, when I talk about, it's three parts of the government. You've got the judiciary, but the judiciary, Supreme Court, but then you've got lower courts, and then all these judges right throughout the country, and then you have law firms. And if you're starting to control law firms in the same way you're starting to control universities as well, by forcing them to do things. Now, Harvard has said we're not going to do that, but he's now freezing over $2 billion worth of funding for Harvard. He's got Columbia to capitulate to him. He's getting law firms to capitulate left, right, and center to him. And this is, again, a movement towards autocracy. That is just the first thing on my list here. What else do we have? US to the EU, pick us or China. This is a dynamic that's going to be very important to look out for. That's not quite what I'm talking about here. Whistleblower: Russian breach of US data through Doge was carried out over Starlink directly to Russia. I did my breaking news update on that. Go and check that out. Again, absolutely worrying. Just all the stuff that's going on. at the moment is just, good news here. A massive fire is currently raging at the APZ-20 bearing plant in Kursk, Russia, facility which is said to be turned into producing components from military equipment such as engines, turbines, and power transmission equipment. That's something to put in my list of stuff for tomorrow. Look, this is watching me work live. But you know, time and time again, the Trump administration just referred New York Attorney General Letitia James to the Department of Justice Pam Bondi for potential prosecution over alleged mortgage fraud. So again, it's like one of my critics. Let's go and get them arrested. Yeah, all of this is dictatorship 101 stuff. This is the same day she confirmed she was scrutinizing if insider trading was in play regarding the 90-day pause in reciprocal tariffs. So she's investigating insider trading. Then the Department of Justice is then going to do her for something or other. Just and then so on and so forth. It goes on and on and on. Pentagon officials. There's been a whole something I mentioned briefly in my breaking news update this morning, which is a whole team of cyber security people. They're involved in quick reaction tech solutions. The whole team has resigned en masse, and they'll be going within a month. Almost the entire team. That's Pentagon. You know, that's national security. You got breaches of the National Labor Relations Board, and you got Doge gutting left, right, and center. You've got soft power being given away. This is one of the other points. Sorry, I'm flitting all over the shop, but one of the other points from Alistair Campbell about where China hold the cards. The soft power. So the USAID funding has just been totally slashed. 85% of it went straight off, and then the whole department moved under Marco Rubio. And we've seen, you know, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Voice of America, they're all being assaulted. So America's giving up soft power. And one of the things that China is doing is just stepping in. They're going up to all of these countries that the US was trying to court for strategic reasons. And now the US has gone America first isolationism, and that is just handing the keys of power to China. And China goes in and mops up all of those other nations that are now kind of lost to a degree, as the US has just deserted them, and not just deserted them, but then punished them, like Vietnam. So what? And I know I've told you this before, but what the US has done over time with Vietnam is say, right, we need Vietnam to move away from the sphere of influence of China, and we need to be less dependent on Chinese manufacturing. So they started making sure that more and more goods were manufactured in Vietnam, which is under their sphere of influence, where China wasn't, and say, right, if we rely on manufacturing from Vietnam, then that's better than relying on China, and we want Vietnam to be a useful ally for us in the Indo-Pacific region. Okay, so let's do all that, blah blah blah. And this takes like decades to do, and then freaking Donald Trump and his lackeys come in and say, hang on, how come Vietnam are selling us so much stuff? Let's whack one of the highest, because their trade deficit was larger than other countries. They got whacked because, of course, the tariffs that Trump put on were not reciprocal tariffs, even though he claimed they were. They were derived from whether you had a trade deficit or a trade surplus. And if you had a surplus or a deficit less than a certain amount, like in percentage terms, then it would only be then you just get a minimum punishment of 10% tariffs. So every nation had 10% tariffs, and then everyone else had tariffs upwards. And Vietnam had 46% tariffs. And that was their punishment for doing what America wanted them to do. So the United States are like, we want to buy more stuff off you, and we want to have an ally in the Indo-Pacific and move manufacturing away from China. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Shake the hands of Vietnam. Thank you, Vietnam, for helping us out. We'll help you. You help us. This is all very mutually beneficial. Oh, sorry. I've just been replaced by someone. Sorry. Trump will continue shaking your hand. Then Donald Trump walks along and goes, are you Vietnam? Yeah, I'm Vietnam. Okay, thanks, Vietnam. Anyway, can you pay us loads for all the stuff that we've asked you to make? We want to charge you more for that. Yeah, but hang on, mate. Wasn't this part of your big international global strategy you're trying to get? Don't you want to be our friends? That was then. This is now. And now you're a dick. And by the way, so is everyone else in the world. You're all dicks, but some of you are bigger dicks than others. So China, excuse my French. China, you're gargantuan. You're like like galactic phallus size. But you, Vietnam, we particular disdain for you. We were your mates. We were only doing what you asked. Yeah, that was then. This is now, and that's where we're at, which is just complete global economic insanity coming from Donald Trump and his bunch of reprobates that don't appear to have a clue what they are doing. Well, so to a degree, Paul, he didn't just make up numbers. They were derived from a calculation, probably from ChatGPT, as has been shown amply. But it was a percentage of. It was taking the imports to a given country and the exports from that country. So the exports from the US to that country and the imports from that country. Dividing one by the other, working out percentage, and then dividing it by 2. And so actually, Vietnam 46% should have been 92%, but they divided by 2 just to be nice. So yeah, it was bonkers, but it wasn't completely arbitrary, but it was completely reflective of the trade balance. And of course, yeah, there you go. So in much more mathematical terms, the delta of exports and imports expressed as a percentage of exports. Thank you for putting my gumph into actual sensible words. So yeah, it wasn't plucked out of his posterior, but it was nothing to do with reciprocal tariffs. These were not reciprocal tariffs. He said, we're going to put reciprocal tariffs on. We're going to put reciprocal tariffs on. Put these tariffs on, and everyone initially was like, where the hell did these numbers come from? And no one could work it out until someone did a ChatGPT, and ChatGPT came up with the exact formula that they then presented the White House when they were challenged. And then it turns out that, yeah, it wasn't reciprocal tariffs at all. It was exactly that, which then, punishes. So some poor island that had sold a bunch of clams or something to the US, not many people live there. And of course, they're not going to be buying more off the US than the US are buying off them if they just bought $3 million worth of clams. Then gets hit with like 90% tariff rate or something ridiculous, 50% tariff rate. And you're like, what have we done? You just came up to us and asked to buy a bunch of our clams, and you cleared us out of clams, or whatever it was, seafood. I forget exactly what it was. You just cleared us out of clams, and now you're punishing us. Just, as I say, just complete insanity. But there you go. Anyway. Please hit me with questions if you have any further questions, and we'll have a little chat about things. Otherwise, I will wrap things up fairly soon. I do really want to remind people that there is the campaign going on. That is super important to me, and I would absolutely love if you guys could help contribute to that. There have been a few donations just taking place during the or at least one donation taking place during the time of this. So thank you very much for that, whoever did that. I do appreciate it. And I'm sure Carl from Ukraine will as well. Here it is. Mike Halls, I think, has just donated today. So thank you, Mike, for that. That is appreciated. So that is linked in the description below. I'm actually going to also put it in the live chat because that's how cool I am. And there it is in the live chat. So you can click on that, hopefully, and do something with it. Can I just say a massive thanks to John Panciotti. Carmen carry Doris, poor old Doris. I've given Doris a bit of a free rein recently. Poor lady has had a tough time of it of late. But thank you, John. It's really, really kind of you. And of course, you are in, are you Costa Rica, John? I get confused if you're Puerto Rico or Costa Rica. But you're one of them, I'm pretty sure, John. So let me know, unless I'm just having a brain fart and you are neither. But I'm fairly sure you are. So thank you, John. You are always insanely generous and very supportive of the channel. I can't thank you enough. Hashtag save Doris. But yes, it is deeply worrying what is going on in the US at the moment, and what I have not wanted to be is like to be a bit of a fear mongerer. But actually, everything I was kind of predicting about the US administration has come true, and some. So actually, my initial fear mongering wasn't that; it was pretty much accurate, and that is what is completely worrying for those good people in the US that are Puerto Rico. Of course, it is Puerto Rico. Good to have you here from Puerto Rico, my good man. Yes. Oh, right. That's so I will that Paul Gilbert, thank you for donating. So Car for Ukraine, my donation wasn't accrued to your figures. I'm sure they got a contact on there. They are really good, Car for Ukraine, so just do that, and that'll be no problem. They've got to contact us at the top of their website here. So just put it in there. If it hasn't been done, I know that Jigger's Poor, we had that quite a bit because it's quite difficult. Or it's not difficult, but you don't always remember to assign it when you put on, donation, to put the reference or whatever, or if they've made a mistake. But yeah, please do that and make sure that we get the recognition, well, that you get the recognition that you deserve. Thank you very much, Blonde Bombsheller. Good to have you hanging out. Keep up the great work, JP. Cheers from Ukraine. You're there at the moment. Yes, you are there at the moment. Let us know how you're getting on. Be very interested to know. Let us know what you're up to. Fantastic stuff. Well done. And I was saying in my my hits and losses video this morning, someone from Gogil from Ireland said, thanks for the inspiration, but I'm on my way out to Ukraine soon with a convoy from Ireland of 16 vehicles. And I was just saying how marvelous that is. We, in a world of global geopolitics where these big geopolitical machines are operating, and, we are but a speck on a cog in a wider engine, we feel that we are not powerful, that we lack agency, that we lack impact. But actually, there are things we can do. And yeah, you don't have to get in a vehicle and drive it to Ukraine. Of course you don't. All sorts of things that we can do. But it feels really good when you do that. You feel like you are making a difference. And of course, okay, one individual vehicle might not make a difference, but all of those NAFO vehicles, all of those Car for Ukraine vehicles, all of those individual charity vehicles from Bristol with Love, from Dan, from them doing, and Johnny, and all those people doing wonderful things. And all of these individual charities around Europe, around the world, around America, and elsewhere, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. All of these people helping where they can, in all the different ways, does help. We do have an impact collectively. It is great, and even if it's just talking at the water cooler at work or around your Sunday dinner table, righting wrongs, correcting misinformation. That is tireless work that we do, and that we need to keep doing. And so we do have agency, and we do have an effect. Don't just think of yourselves as an individual. We are all, I mean, I know it's not particularly glorifying, is it? But we are all ants in a nest that is working to a common goal. And we all play our part in that. And it's devaluing us to mere ants crawling around. But collectively, there's a sum that's greater than our parts. And I think that's really important, that we're all parts of a big machine, as Finnish guy says. So don't forget that. And there is this continuous flow of vehicles, and that is what Ukraine needs. They need them now just as much as they ever have. Now, I was asked by Pierre today, what my general thoughts on, how positive are you? What are you thinking in terms of where Ukraine are at, where Russia are at? And I guess I'll leave it in the event, in the absence of any questions from you guys. I will. Oh, New Forest for Ukraine sounds awesome. I live near the New Forest. I'm going to take my boys to the inflatable assault course on a pond on a lake in the New Forest. I'm just down the road from there. So New Forest for Ukraine. Anyway, I digress. I believe that It's tough for Ukraine at the moment. So I was just looking at 19 days of losses, and I think from those Andrew perpetual loss lists, we can now safely say that it was probably a very painful retreat from Kursk. I think whatever went wrong in Kursk was a good thing. I think it was great, but it all just went wrong at the end. And there's probably a number of different things that led to it going wrong. I know there's talk about the Americans restricting intelligence and aid, and that might have had an effect. Then you had the Russians having a particularly effective group, the Rubicon, the group of drone operators there that were doing a really good job of taking out Ukrainians. And because there was only one kind of supply route into there, it was very kind of relatively easy to just hammer that supply route, so that then you starved the Ukrainians, and then it all kind of collapsed. It's the whole, amateurs talk about tactics, professionals talk about logistics. But that retreat, and also I was saying as well in my video today, that it's not just a retreat. There would have, all that time that the Ukrainians were in the Kursk region attacking, they would have lost lots of vehicles over that time, but you wouldn't have got video footage of all of that, the Ukrainian lost vehicles. So then when the Ukrainians were pushed out of Kursk, not only were they leaving stuff behind, because operational withdrawals are really difficult, they would have had abandoned equipment, stuff they couldn't move on time, stuff that had broken down, they couldn't move, that would have been fixed otherwise, but it was broken down, and whatever. So you lose a lot of kit doing operational withdrawals, and then you also get to see all the kit that had been destroyed over the months and months of Ukraine being in Kursk, that hadn't been caught on video, that maybe the Russians hadn't released to social media or whatever. So then, with the Ukrainians being pushed out of Kursk, the losses looked really quite significant. But of course, you've got to divide a lot of that over that time. But all of the losses then get seen and published in a relatively short period of time. So those losses for the 19 days of the backlog of Andrew perpetual loss list that I'm just going through, from March the 1st to March the 19th, right? Something like that. Then you are seeing an awful lot of Ukrainian kit. Now, when it was on its worst days, it was above the Russian combat asset losses, but not significantly. So again, the Russians are still losing every day phenomenal amounts of kit. But also, like I've told you a million times, when I talk about combat asset losses, I talk about like artillery, air defense, artillery, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, armored fighting vehicles, generic, APCs, armored personnel carriers, MRAPs, mine-resistant ambush protection vehicles, and IMVs, which are infantry mobility vehicles. Things like Humvees that are not as armored as a Bushmaster that is going to be a mine-resistant ambush protection vehicle. Okay, you've got all of those vehicles, and I call them combat assets, right? Because that's what you normally use when you are attacking or defending areas on the front line. And the Russians, on the worst days of those 19 days, the Ukrainians had somewhat more than the Russians because of Kursk, I would argue. But of course, when we're talking about combat assets, we are seeing attack after attack by the Russians using motorcycles, quads, golf carts, laders, SUVs. And actually, their combat assets include these other categories. And all of those days where the Ukrainians were losing more combat assets than the Russians were usually losing more vehicles as a whole. And there would be whole tranches of vehicles in the ATV sections where the Ukrainians would be losing none, and the Russians would be losing like 10 motorcycles, like 12 quads, 6 golf buggies, or whatever. And you'd be like, those are actually combat assets. And then the civilian vehicles, where the Russians are losing an absolute ton of those, and then more trucks as well, by the way, than the Ukrainians as well. So overall, if you add up all the equipment lost over the 19 days, it's just a phenomenal amount of equipment, and the Russians losing crazy amounts. Although in that time period, they are the highest Ukrainian losses I've seen for some time. Again, because of Kursk. So just like, what my thoughts are, so and Pierre made this point, is that the problem with losing a lot of equipment in Kursk is that was some of the best Ukrainian equipment they had. So they put some of their best units up into Kursk. They had all that success, did really well, and then it slowly started getting more difficult, and then it all kind of collapsed back. And the stuff they were losing is stuff that, you know, there's a lot of Bradleys in there. There were, you know, there's a lot of mobility vehicles of all those different categories I was just mentioning, all of that Western, pretty much. So the question is, are they going to continue to get that equipment at those rates? Well, they're not going to get Bradleys anymore, are they? There might be some still coming through. I don't know. But they're not going to get new consignments of Bradleys unless something changes. They're not going to get new American anything. So it's all going to be down to the Europeans and manufacturing their own stuff. The question is, do the Ukrainians have enough personnel from any new recruited units or reconstituted units going forward to do any major assaults anymore? Like, what is the Ukrainian ability to conduct sizable offensives? Do they have the ability to do that at all? And I don't know that they do. So I'm pretty sure they would have done it already had, you know, the 2 brigade attack into Belgorod that's still going on. That's really minor, all things considered. What you want is a massive punch somewhere, and you're not getting that. They're probably having to just throw in loads along the front line to defend what is consistently taking place right along the front lines, with the Russians pushing and pushing and pushing. Now, the Russians are low on loads of equipment, but they still, like, they've just had an uptick in recruitment because people are thinking that negotiations are going to bring about the end of the war. So if they can get a big payment from the Russian MOD up front, then they'll sign up, join the army, and then the negotiation peace will come, and they'll just not have to go and fight on the front lines and get paid really well. Thank you very much. So you're starting to see, and it might be just a bit of a one-off, but you're seeing recruitment doing a little better for the Russians. You know, they are still able to throw meat after meat after meat, even if they are getting to a point where their equipment losses are really significant. And I don't think, you know, they are doing more and more attacks in cars and SUVs and motorcycles. But those are going to be, they're going to be able, there's an endless supply of those, right? That's not an issue. And so as long as they still got the people, they can still throw themselves at the Ukrainians. So I'm not quite sure what I believe at the moment about, you know, how the Ukrainians are relying super heavily on drones. There's still a massive asymmetry in drones, and they're using those drones as individual humans to trip the Russians that are coming over in these waves. But that is okay. That is having an effect, and they are doing really well with the drones. But I don't know that drones can control trench lines. You know, I was saying this the other day, and not everyone agreed. But there was a former British infantryman. Okay, he's going to have his biases. He's out in Ukraine saying, whatever you think, you know, drones are good, and this is all good and well here and there, but they need more people. The Ukrainians just need more people to be able to do your basic infantry work that can't be replaced by just like drones flying through the air. And I know not everyone agrees with that, but I think there's something to that. And I just think, you know, the demographics for Ukraine are not looking good. Interestingly, Russia have just released all there's stats that have come out to say that their birth rate is at the lowest it's been for like 200 years or something like that. So they're not in a good place, but then they've got 100 million more people to draw from. So, you know, yeah, I just think it's a real challenge for the Ukrainians at the moment. Yeah. Okay. There are a few comments that I wanted to go through here. Yes, I do need to do that actually. So Bobo Uzerla says, can you get James from Wine Ukraine on a live stream to talk about his research for an alternative to Starlink? I know he's trying to fundraise for that. I just haven't had the mental bandwidth to be able to give that a massive amount of time. But yeah, I think that would be a useful thing to do. Mark Biscu, thanks, mate. You're always such a good man. By the way, when I was away, my missus sent some patches to you, Mark and Olena. I feel like we're at a fork in the road where at this point things can go extremely well or terribly wrong. Thank you for everything you continue to do for Ukraine. Well, thank you, Mark. Yeah. I think for me, it's always been the case, right, that Ukrainian success does very much depend on the use of drones, both in the short range, and then drones and missiles in the long range. And it's been frustratingly long in the making, literally in the making. But they are apparently now coming out with drone missiles and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. And everything's about scale for me. And like the Ukrainians do, I think, a slightly better job of targeting military and industrial concerns. And I think that if we can see the Ukrainians indigenously produce really good stuff. So we talked about the Peklo missile drone. Well, there's another one that's come out today that we just talked about earlier in this video, the Bars missile drone. Okay, don't know anything about it. 700 to 800-kilometer range. Right. How many are you producing? You know, you get 20, 30 of those kind of missile drones being sent a night, 50 of those a night. You know, it needs to be at the scales that Russia are doing to Ukraine. If Ukraine can do that to Russia, then that's where the pressure really gets put on Russia. And if you're affecting the hydrocarbons production and refinement, then that's their ability to fund the war. And we're already seeing that the price of oil is having a really detrimental effect on their ability to fund the war. And then you've got sanctions on shadow fleets, and the EU can keep up the pressure. And if Trump's trade war drives the world into recession, then actually, you know, that will hurt the Russians in terms of the price per barrel big time. And you know, that is what I think is the answer for Ukraine. It's an economic one that is exacerbated by the Ukrainians hammering the crap out of the Russians from a distance. Because remember, every time they fire a missile, a drone missile, they're not losing anyone, right? You're not charging into a trench line. You're not losing a human being. You are throwing metal and explosives at a range of 500 kilometers. And I've said right from the beginning of the war that Ukraine, the way that they win this war is by using an absolute ton more distance strikes than the Russians do. But at the moment, the Russians have ramped up their Shahed manufacturing by such a significant margin. And this is something else that Pierre was rightfully saying, that I've mentioned it a number of times, but it should be focused on more, is the explosive capacity on board each Shahed is now much larger. Like the payload, those Shahids are exploding in a way that, so I saw Lyuty explode today in Russia, in Kursk, I think it was, that was like, yeah, it's a pretty big explosion. But the explosions I'm seeing of the Shahids that are hitting at the moment are huge. Now, I know not all Shahids are loaded with those explosives. Some of them are kind of decoys or whatever. But the ones that do, they cause some serious damage. And I think that's a challenge. When you've got 100 to 200 of those hitting every night, you know, what goes up must come down. I think it's a real issue for the Ukrainians. Okay. So this, right, you know, they exist. Thank you. Got a late listen here. What about the 160,000 mobilization by Putin? Any news there? Well, so that's not a mobilization. That is conscription. And this is what they conscript every year. So this is nothing unusual, apart from it's not what they conscript every year. It's 40,000 more. So there is an uptick there. But whether that will be achieved, I don't know. But the conscription is supposedly for soldiers who cannot be used in the front lines. Although I think they can get around that by using them in the north inside Russia to defend Russia. So when the Ukrainians hit Kursk and Belgorod, they can, I think, technically use conscripts to do that. But technically, these are you know, usually your young guys that come in for national service for a year or whatever, and traditionally they'd be used. You do a bit of training, and then you'd use them to like deal with wildfires during wildfire season, and then do a bit of this, do a bit of that, and then you have your national service. Thank you very much. Go away. So this isn't like the worst thing in the world. That they'd have 120,000 anyway. 160,000. The question is, how many of those do they convert into contract soldiers? So if they can convince those people who have signed up for conscription into becoming paid up contract soldiers, and if they can get a good conversion rate, then obviously that's when it becomes a problem. But there are too many unknowns there, so I don't really know the effect that will have. But it's certainly not like hugely unusual, other than they've upped it to 40,000. The question is, can they get that extra 40,000? So what else do we have from you guys? Sorry, it's too busy banging on. Thank you very much to the Weasel with the super sticker. Really kind of you, Weasel. Thank you very much for that. Super generous lot you all are. So just seeing if this is worth concentrating on. Sheila Huff says, Sheila Huff, EU excuses seem trivial with meetings, etc., but North Korea pumping weapons constantly. EU security is important. Then send everything. Starting to think that nobody wants Ukraine to win over nuclear. So I'm going to sort of translate that into North Korea really are better. There's no doubt about it. They are better allies to Russia than anyone else is to Ukraine, arguably. As we heard earlier, there have been 15,000 containers going to Russia that they provided, I don't know, 5 million odd rounds of artillery. Incredibly important, I think, North Korea have been to Russia. But of course, North Korea don't really care about their own people. They're just, I think, a cost to them in a sense. And they're probably getting a really good deal as far as they're concerned back from the Russians. So the problem I've always said is that can keep going on, and as long as Russia can keep paying in some way, and even if they can't pay in money, they can pay in like technology and knowledge, and actually they can pay probably in oil and gas, which it's not like raw money. It's stuff that they're pumping out of the ground, and okay, it's going to cost them in extraction, but essentially, and also you could argue grain as well. There's quite a lot of that coming from Russia. It's a big breadbasket. So there are ways that probably Russia can continue to pay North Korea that I think is a real challenge for Ukraine, because that's a resource that the Ukrainians can't pull on in the same way. If North Korea have already provided 12,000, 15,000, is it now, troops to Russia to fight against Ukraine, where are the 15,000 that Ukraine can get from somewhere else? And of course they can't. Yeah, okay, international legions and whatnot, but that's a drop in the ocean, I think, comparatively speaking. Javier Alvarez, thank you for Car for Ukraine campaign until victory. Thank you very much. I will pass that on. I really do appreciate that, Javier. Thank you. Awesome stuff. I don't know if there are any other questions or comments that are worthy of sharing. Oh, Andrew, are you still there? If you're still there, do you fancy coming on for the last 10 minutes of chat and get your view about what's going on? If you are, I will send you a link. Copy that, and I'll send it to you on your Twitter messaging. So just go to there. Sorry to keep everyone waiting here, Andrew, because it's been a long time since we spoke. And are you not on? Where are you on? You're not on Twitter anymore. Why can I not see you in messages on Twitter? Oh well. Oh dear. Maybe I could do 10 minutes. Are you not? I seem to have lost you on Twitter. Have you? Is there something? Is it something I said? Oh, here we go. Andrew Perpetua. Didn't find you on Andrew. 10 minutes is all I got as well, so don't worry about it. That'd be cool. Yeah, Twitter messages is weird. You're quite right. We get a view from Andrew then about what he thinks is going on. Actually, the interpretation of that data that I've just gone through. You can see the second video of that later. As I said, I recorded it, but it's sheet 11 to sheet 19. Find out whether a lot of that really was from Kursk. So, Andrew, welcome, mate.
Hello.
Hey, mate. Thank you for this. I've gone through those 19 sheets that you've done because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I love looking at them. And there's definitely a lot of. I don't know if you're listening earlier. I was saying, look, combat asset losses are a bit of a misnomer because Russia uses all these other vehicles as combat assets. And when you add them in, it kind of skews things a little. But certainly for those 19 sheets, the Ukrainians were losing a lot of kit. Not like crazy high value stuff like we saw on that last sheet where there was those USVs releasing the UAVs and striking around Crimea and Kherson and taking out that incredibly high value stuff, but just lots of infantry mobility vehicles and similar every single day. Was that mainly due to Kursk?
A lot of it. So yeah, there were a lot of losses in Kursk, and they didn't all happen at once. Like,
yes,
a lot of them were happening, like, it was like the whole time. Okay,
that's exactly what I said earlier. Yeah,
like, it didn't all happen at once. Like, people, like, a lot of people are like, oh, they lost everything while withdrawing, and it's like, no. Like a lot of those Bradleys, we knew that they were damaged, like, in September, and we didn't know what happened to them because you just see them get damaged and then you don't see them again. And then, like, like several months later, like, the Russians, like, drive a car down the road, and in the distance you can see the Bradley still there.
Yeah.
So it's like things like that. So it's like we knew that they were damaged, and we knew a lot of them were abandoned. But we didn't. They seemed like they were probably recoverable, so we never actually knew what would happen to them. And it turns out that a lot of them were just abandoned or destroyed.
Yeah.
So, and then there was also the Rubicon did like a lot of damage on the highway, but they didn't destroy that much of value. They did destroy a Bradley. They destroyed probably like 10 or 15 MRAPs. Like, they destroyed like a few Kirpies. Actually, like, almost exclusively attacking Kirpies. I don't know why they don't like Kirpies so much, but and also Humvees and like pickup trucks. So, like, it wasn't like anything like super valuable. And then there was like a lot of losses like in Sumy. So there's like this one highway in Sumy that took like a ton of losses, and they lost like.
Is that on the way? Is that on the way to the Kursk sector?
Yeah. So it's like they lost like a lot of like MRAPs there, and they lost a lot of like M113s, and that part of the highway, like, Russia's now captured that part of Sumy.
Right.
So, like,
is that Novenka or the way
like,
somewhere like that?
What's it called? Like Basivka or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's really good news that you say that, because like sometimes I wonder whether I know what the hell I'm talking about. And that's exactly what I said on my videos, and in fact earlier, which is these didn't all just happen during the withdrawal. When you withdraw, you get to see, the Russians will then publish, and you get to see all this stuff, and you go, right, but some of that's happened over the last 6 months type thing. It's exactly what you say. And the other point, which I made in the other video, was that so many of what Andrew and his team will list on his spreadsheets will then be repeated on the spreadsheets, not because it's a duplication, but because exactly what you just said is it was damaged here or it was abandoned here and then it's destroyed over here. So, and there might be a month between that. So you see it abandoned there, and then you get some footage of a drone dropping an IED on an abandoned piece of kit, and so then you go, now it's destroyed, and then in the description you put abandoned, then hit by an IED or whatever. So you are clearly saying that, but for someone like me, it might look like there's loads and loads of equipment, but actually a lot of that equipment is being double entried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's like there's losses in like Kharkiv and like South Donetsk, because like Rubicon was also operating in the Velika Novosilka area, so like all of the like logistics routes that are like north of Velika Novosilka, those were all under like pretty strong drone attacks the entire time. Although the Rubicon there weren't as good. They were not very impressive. They're like kind of just a normal drone unit, but they took out like a bunch of like Huskies and Bushmasters and uh, like Humvees and like a few Bogdanas.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing more and more Ukrainian produced stuff, which is a reflection of the fact they are producing more stuff. So Bogdanas are appearing, and I think that's kind of a good thing in a way. It's not good, obviously, to lose anything, but that you start seeing more like Novators and Ukrainian produced stuff, it means that
Yeah.
they are starting to gear up their production to be able to meet the needs of the front line. So there's a kind of a weird silver lining to that.
Yes, and not only is Ukraine producing, but Europe is producing. Like Germany is making a lot of that stuff for Ukraine.
What the Ukrainian stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because at the beginning of this video, top end of this video, I reported that Spain, Technova company, is now going to produce three, like a medevac vehicle, I think an MRAP or something. Anyway, three vehicles under license from Ukraine, which I thought was an interesting thing. But obviously, they're doing that elsewhere, like you say.
Yeah, yeah. Like Germany is making stuff. I think Germany is making some of the chassis for the Bogdanas.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think they're probably going to end up making a bunch of chassis for other things because, like, the German economy is really bad right now, and
Yeah.
one part of your economy, crashing is that people stopped buying trucks. So, like,
Yeah.
logistics is often the first thing to crash, and honestly, a lot of MRAPs are just trucks with armor on top. So like
Yeah.
these truck manufacturers are saying like, no one's buying our trucks anymore. We have all this manufacturing capacity, and we kind of want to manufacture something. So they're just kind of like going to Ukraine asking if they want to buy some trucks.
Yeah, and like I always talk about, there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's going to be an element of self-servingness to, obviously, like
Yeah.
if we're going to help Ukraine, let's at least stimulate our own economy.
Yeah, and
So
these deals, these are not the German government doing this. Like the German government has nothing to do with it. It's just German companies doing it.
yeah, I mean, the money. You can argue the money might come from the German government through the EU and then back round again. So the money's coming from all over the shop. What's your view of the front line at the moment and the prospect for either side? Because I was just trying to give my opinion earlier, thinking, and I'm a bit all over the shop because the Ukrainians have lost quite a lot of decent kit, and they're not getting the American kit to help them. And I don't know what their recruitment is like and whether they do have the ability to ever do an offensive again. Yet there is a potential for distant strikes, and the Russians are still like managing to get people running out of kit, but they're still throwing people. You don't need good kit; you can just throw them in on ladders and bloody party loafs. So, what's your opinion?
Oh well, the Russians are in really a lot of trouble right now. Like people are really underplaying how much trouble they're in. So their infantry situation is pretty good. They have a lot of infantry. They don't have as a very high morale. I don't think their infantry is pretty low morale, and that's largely stems from their culture. They have a culture of abusing people, like treating people like trash. So the morale is really bad, but they have a lot of infantry. But the problem is that infantry are worthless unless they're in the right place at the right time, and that's why equipment is so important because they get you to where you need to be when you need to be there. So right now, they're largely out of armor. Like they still have armor. They probably still have like 1 or 2,000 armored, significant armored vehicles left, and they are manufacturing a few hundred a year. So, but for all intents and purposes, they're really running out, and the armor that we're seeing, they come in batches. So it really appears that their armor is being either repaired or refurbished and brought in batches. Like for example, The other day, they did this huge attack with upgraded BMP-2s. So what we think happened is either they took a bunch of damaged BMP-2s, or maybe even destroyed BMP-2s and sent them back to Russia, and refurbished them back to working condition, and upgraded them all the way to the most current iteration of the BMP-2, which is the BMP-2, I think 675 or whatever. So they took a whole batch of those and sent them to Chasiv Yar, and did this giant attack and lost all of them. Just lost all of them. So
that was in Chasiv Yar, was it? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're doing things like that. So either those BMPs are really obviously newly refurbished. Where they came from originally, I would suspect that these were vehicles that were used in like Avdiivka or something, and they were damaged or even destroyed, because the vehicle, like even if it burns down and you just have a hull, like say everything is just on fire, everything's destroyed, they take the hull, send it back to Russia, tear everything out, put all new everything in it, and call it a new vehicle, basically. So that's kind of what I think happened, is they just took a whole bunch of those and refurbished them. Or it could have just been stuff that they had in a stockpile somewhere. I don't know. So
yeah.
But yeah, this is the sort of thing that they're doing right now, is they're refurbishing these vehicles. They can't manufacture enough. They can't really refurbish enough either. And they're just slowly losing out. And these light vehicles, they cannot replace armor. Light vehicles can be useful in certain circumstances where you need very quick attacks, but if light vehicles are coming, it's just ridiculous. Like, I don't know if you saw the attacks near Verkno-Kamyanska, but they did a large attack with like 13 light vehicles. It was like all Ladas and stuff, and Ukraine defended the attack using Dipicum, using AGS, and these vehicles, they cannot withstand that sort of hit, and it just, everything got wiped out. And I'm not sure anybody even survived the attack. So, and they never even made it to where they were attacking. So, and that's another thing that you see a lot lately, is these Russian assaults, a lot of the assaults never even make it to the front line. There's this pretty humorous thing yesterday where IMI posted some geolocations of a Russian assault where all their vehicles were destroyed. And this guy, he messaged IMI saying the video has to be old because Russia captured all those positions 2 weeks ago. And we saw this and we were just all laughing. We're like, yeah, I guess that's proof of the Ukrainian advance then.
Yeah.
So like, they can't even reach the front line because these vehicles, they're getting just dominated. They don't have the armored punch to get through anything.
Is that predominantly because of drones, or is artillery playing at all of a role?
Well, there was this comment the other day. I think the 46th Brigade. I think they said in Andriivka, the Russians attacked there in Andriivka, and Ukraine repelled the attack with 600 artillery shells and 200 drones.
Wow. So interesting. So yeah, I mean, that is, I mean, I don't have a frame of reference as to the ratios there, but it would indicate that, yeah, the artillery is pretty damn useful still.
Yeah, and they said also that they said they used 600 artillery shells, 200 attack drones to repel the attack. Every piece of armor was destroyed. Every light vehicle was destroyed, and there were no Russian survivors.
Wow. So that
Yeah,
sound
and the
true?
attack was that arrow.
The attack was what? Sorry,
The attack was that arrow.
that arrow there, that one, that big long arrow.
Yeah, yeah.
So not a single one of those Russians survived, and all their equipment was destroyed. Wow.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Ukrainians' opportunity to be able to? Sorry, it's quite a bit of sound there. What do
Sorry.
you? Ukrainian ability to be able to take back significant amounts of land. Do you think that all they're going to be able to manage to do is take like small bits of land there and a bit of land here, but a major punch, a major offensive? Do you think the Ukrainians have the ability to do an offensive anymore?
They don't need to do an offensive.
Right.
What they need to do is wear out the Russians, and
Yeah.
the Russians will leave on their own. They don't have the strength to defend. They can't defend. So, I mean, if Russia tried to defend right now, what would happen is what you're seeing right now. They would take tens of thousands of casualties per month. All of their defenses would be systematically destroyed, and they wouldn't be able to sustain it. They don't have the manpower to sustain that level of casualty. The natural attrition of what is going on right now is so great that they cannot passively fight. Their only option is active offensive means, because defense has become effectively impossible. So if they want to sit there and defend a line and build up a little trench or something, they're going to get absolutely massacred, and they're going to be forced to withdraw eventually. So
do you think the Russians lose more by attacking than they do defending? So that actually the Ukrainians, to some degree, are, I use the word carefully, happy. Are the Ukrainians happy to defend because it's actually more attritional than them actually gearing up an attack, which will lose them material and people to a greater degree than if they're doing active defense?
I mean, attacking is worse than defending, right? You're going to take more casualties attacking. But defending takes a ton of casualties, and when you're sitting there and you're not attacking anymore, because attacking also boosts morale. So when you're, especially in winter, so if you're attacking, like if you're just going to sit there defensively and you don't mean to attack anymore, like you have no goal of attacking, you're just sitting there, your goal is to survive. That's all you want to do, is just stay alive. And you're sitting in your little trench having drones attack you 24/7, your morale is going to collapse. You're not going to want to fight anymore, because every day you're going to have like, a 5 or 10% chance to die every single day. And over time, Russia just cannot sustain that. They don't have the manpower. You would need to be able to commit many millions of men to hold this defensively. Just sit there in a trench, like millions of men, and they don't have that.
Yeah. Okay, last couple of questions, if I may. What's going on in Belgrade? Because I've not really heard anything there for like 10 days now. And I was wondering if it was just a kind of flash in the pan, whether it was doomed to failure or whether it's succeeding, but it's just a much smaller objective, or like, what do you think is going on there and how's it going?
Russia is okay. So zoom in on those dots on the highway. Go north,
Please.
north.
Please.
North.
Oh, these ones.
Yes.
These ones.
Those dots. You see those dots on the highway?
Yeah.
This is Russia's main logistics route. Okay. And if you look at, like, you can.
I showed this video this morning. Yeah.
So this is their main logistics route. So this is what's happening to Russia. Okay. So they're getting all of their reinforcements cut off, all of their logistics cut off, and Russia is trying to counterattack and retake everything. and they have retaken some parts. Like they are back into what's it called, Demidovka.
Yeah.
Popivka is there's some evidence that Ukraine recaptured Popivka, and the Russians are in Demidovka, but they haven't captured it yet. In fact, they're taking a lot of casualties there, and they're taking a lot of casualties getting there. And you also have to keep in mind that there are no bridges to get here. Ukraine blew up all the bridges. Russia has been trying to lay pontoons, but Ukraine keeps blowing those up too. And there aren't many roads to these locations. These are actually pretty remote towns. So there's really only that one road. And also, a lot of the roads you see on the map here are not paved. They're like farm roads, basically. And it's really hard for Russia to do much. Like they're trying, but it's just difficult. You kind of have to drop off infantry like pretty far away and have them march forward. So
what's the end game then? What's Ukraine trying to achieve here?
Ukraine just wanted to create a buffer between Russia and Sumy.
Right.
That's all they wanted. It's not a very big buffer, but I think they'd more happily fight in Popivka than like Miropilia
in their own country. Yeah, and so with going up to here to Kursk, obviously the Russians are now coming down. Do you think they've got momentum to come down further?
It's so hard for them, because if you look at Sumy is a really difficult place to attack. It's really a defender's dream. So there's these really dense forests and very few roads, and the roads are very spindly. They're very long, narrow roads, often traveling very long distances through forests. So it's really difficult to attack Sumy. So there's like this border region that Russia could capture in Sumy, but once you get past that border region, it's you get closer and closer to these forests. And these forests are flanked by these trench systems, and it's really difficult to attack. It's probably one of the most difficult places to attack. I mean, recently there's been Ukraine's been talking that they expect Russia to attack in Chernihiv later this summer, which I think they've said that every single year so far, and it hasn't happened yet. But
they do have a tendency to say, "Oh, the Russians are going to attack here. They're going to attack here." And it never quite happens. You wonder whether they believe it or whether they're psyopsing or whatever.
Well, I know that they really thought Russia was going to attack Sumy, and that's why they attacked Sucha. But I think Russia still wants to attack Sumy, but I don't think they have the capability. They don't have the military power, at least not to be successful.
Yeah.
I don't think Russia really has the power to be successful doing much of anything anymore. They've really kind of Russia's kind of reached the point where I don't think they even have a plan anymore.
So, okay, this then brings me on to the last question. So Javier Alvarez says, what do you think is Putler's end game, Andrew? Will he take Trump's lifeline, or will he keep pushing until 2026?
Putin, I don't think Putin understands what's going on in this war. Just like I don't think Trump understands what's going on. I tend
to agree with you.
They live in these information bubbles where they are kind of immune from reality.
Yeah.
And Putin believes that Ukraine is like on its last legs, and that just one more push will be enough to break them. And it's just not true. It's not reality.
But then the reality is he knows it's been going on for 3 years and he still hasn't succeeded. So while he might not, Putin this is, while he might not have a clue, on a tactical, operational level, what's going on, he must be deeply frustrated by the fact that, like, nothing's really happened for a year.
But, like, look at the Russian propaganda. Because I think a lot of that propaganda, I think a lot of it is what Putin actually thinks.
Right.
I think their propaganda is trying to brainwash everyone else into thinking the same way Putin does. He's trying to create a narrative in his own image of what he believes the world is.
Then you start getting onto funky, higher level sort of questions here about, okay, well, if he's brainwashed himself, who's he brainwashed by?
Himself,
who's really who is really running things? Because there will be the military who do know what are going on, right? There's got to be some level of reality recognition somewhere in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that Russia has this culture where you always have to shift the blame to someone else because you don't want the blame to fall on you. So like, no matter how much you accept reality, you have to shift the blame. So like, this is why like Russian morale is so bad, because the infantry, they know that their commander knows what's going on because they know their commander, they work with the commander every day. So, but the commander still forces them to go on suicide missions. So like, the commander is being told like attack or else. So he's like, okay, then I guess we attack, so like every step of the way the military is going to cover their own butt all the way to the top, where the guy at the top is telling Putin like everything's going great. And you see this a lot in the military where they say they declare that they captured a town that they haven't even attacked yet.
Yeah. And I've reported on that an awful lot. Yeah. And
then they have to attack it over and over and over again, no matter how hopeless it is, because they've already captured it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like these situations. Like I don't think Putin lives in reality. I don't think Trump lives in reality. I don't think these people fully comprehend what's going on. And Trump is trying to bring everyone else to his side of like rejecting what's actually happening. And this is why we spend a lot of time trying to convince politicians around Europe of what's actually happening, and giving them video evidence and actual facts and things like that, so they can actually see what's happening, because the propaganda is trying so desperately to paint an image that isn't reality, and really has like no basis in reality. They want everyone to think that Russia is still extremely powerful and that Ukraine is about to collapse, and any minute now they will collapse, and they're stupid because every day Russia advances, but they never address the actual problems that Russia has, where their economy is trash, they're running out of equipment, they've become completely dependent on other nations supplying them military aid. Like I actually think at this point Russia is more dependent on foreign aid than Ukraine is.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
So, and there are like in theory, like if we were playing our cards right, there are things we could probably do to really cripple Russia at this point, because North Korea is doing a lot to help Russia.
Yeah.
But North Korea at the same time is very reliant on China. And China is kind of in a bad spot right now. And if we had the leadership, we could probably come to agreements with China to make them handle North Korea.
And that was starting to, not with regard to North Korea, but that was happening with regard to secondary sanctions. So I think Janet Yellen and the Treasury Department under Biden actually did a pretty good job. It was a difficult job. It requires global, influence that's very difficult to keep on top of, because your loopholes are always turning out and then you have to close out. It's again like kind of global whack-a-mole. But I think actually the US Treasury Department was starting to have an effect on India and China with regard to secondary sanctions, where banks and ports were stopping taking Russian oil and doing transactions. And then Trump came along, and it appears to like that's where the Trump could have won this like that easily. He had all the tools to, like you say, to screw over. I mean, you can talk about North Korea, but I'd say to influence China. Instead, what he's done is start a trade war with everyone and just give Russia as much breathing room as they could possibly want. It's just insanity, and it annoys the hell out of me.
But yeah, so like we do have the levers to really damage Russia, but we're just not using them. And because I really think that if we went to China and we basically said, like, if we gave them a list of demands, and the demands were things like, stop North Korea from sending aid to Russia, and we will give you XYZ, and if you stop this, we'll do this. If you came up with a rational list of demands where each side could win and each side would have something to be happy about, I think you could get China to go along with it, and then that would totally cripple Russia. But we don't have leaders who like do rational things. Like, our leaders are more like into hoping for the best and doing nothing. And what's really like disappointing about Europe is that
it's hungry. That's what's really disappointing about Europe, is bloody hungry. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Trump is doing a strategy on Europe that's actually pretty genius, and it's unfortunate that's working so well. So this is what Trump is doing. Trump is basically doing exactly what he wants in Europe, which is to completely withdraw from Europe. But every once in a while, like every month or 2 months or whatever, he will call up a European leader or go visit one or whatever, and he'll tell them exactly what they want to hear. And then as soon as they leave, he'll go back to doing whatever he wants to do. And that little piece of hope that he dangles on Europe every few weeks is what is paralyzing Europe into refusing to accept that their relationship with the US is dead. Okay, so and this, I wish Europe at some point would catch on to what he's doing, but they have this hope, this eternal hope that everything will go back to normal, but it's not going to.
No, I think, Europe just need to be done with the US and be a bit more like China, actually, in flexing a bit. And there are talks that I was listening to some analysis last night say, actually, there are a load of cards that Europe have. And they've actually not played the cards, but they've showed the cards. They said, look, this is what we are going to do if you're going to get if things aren't going to go right in the next 90 days of negotiations. But I would be inclined to just say, screw negotiations, guys. But then, of course, that's going to hurt people. None of this is good. There are no options that are good. But China, I was saying earlier in the video, Andrew, China have loads of cards on the US, and China will win a trade war with the US. They are a dictatorship, so they can suffer much more than the US can as a democracy. And actually, they hold loads of things over the US that the US hadn't, I think, realized quite properly enough. And I think it was a very ill-advised decision to start a global trade war anyway, but particularly with China. But what they are achieving is what both sides want, which is, well, I don't think the US wanted Europe to go towards China, but they did want a kind of Europe to go their own way, and China and Russia wanted Europe to be torn away from the US, and that's exactly what's happening. So in a sense, like both sides are getting what they want, but I don't think that's really what the US wants outside of the Trump orbit. But anyway, yeah. So I digress. Look, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a long 10 minutes, and I love it. I love you for it. Crazy times at the moment. I really appreciate all of your loss lists when they do come out. I know, is it just a matter of being insanely overworked?
Yeah, I mean, sometime in like January, the amount of work we do on a daily basis like doubled. So like we were like doing as much as physically possible, and then it doubled. So like like we were doing, like on average we were doing like 750 lines a day, and now we're doing like 12 or 1300 lines a day. And it's just like so many videos. Like we used to be doing like 160 videos a day, and now we're doing like 300 a day. So it's just like the insanity of how much more content there is now versus
why is that? So is it just it's now both sides are just releasing? It's not that there's any more activity, they're just for some reason releasing more.
Honestly, I think it's because we keep drawing attention to things, it makes them want to post more. So like, for example, like Artem, he wrote his article on drone interceptions, and when he wrote his article on drone interceptions, it made Ukraine go like, oh, we have more videos, so they started posting more. And then he wrote another article on drone interceptions, and then the Russians were like, you know what, we have some videos too. So now the Russians post them, and it's like every time he writes an article, we like get twice as many videos. Okay.
Damn it.
So yeah, this is what happens. It's like the more attention we bring to things, the more it gets posted of that thing, because people are like, oh, we do that too, you know. So so yeah, it's and now we have to be very careful that there's some channels that have practices that we don't enjoy, like for example, having a 90-second video with 100 events in it. We don't like that because it's very stressful. So we don't want to bring attention to those channels, because we don't want more channels to edit like that, because it's really annoying. So like we want to.
Well, that's Robert Magyar though. That's what he does.
I know, it hurts. It hurts. Now he doesn't even, you know. Have you seen his videos? He doesn't even show one event at a time anymore. Now he shows 9 at a time.
What, in a tile?
Yeah.
Jesus wept.
Do you know how hard it is to go through that? It's a lot.
Soul destroying. Do you still need help from people? And I know it's a difficult thing, and it's a kind of it's not for everyone. You know, the sort of work that you and your team do, and it's very kind of samey, I assume. But it's also really, really important. Is there any way that people can help? Do you want help?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely things we need help with. I mean, with regards to videos, it's really hard, because we desperately need help, but we also need help from people who can actually help, and it takes like it's a really huge commitment. There are like lesser things that we do need help with. Like we've been trying to do more video content, so like we could use someone to like make thumbnails or something. That seems like a lesser job.
But by the way, can I just show you something? This is what Benny Pie, who has who really helps me a lot. He has a thumbnail creator for me, which is kind of semi-automated, that saves loads of times. Can I just show it to you? So this is the thumbnail automator, and I just upload an image there, which I'll say, right, that I've got downloaded. Let's get that Taurus image in, and I have different presets, and I can set like my part 1 or my mapping update or this, and then I can change the color to things and then put different text in, and then I end up having my, you can set it to however you like. I just have my very basic design output there, but Benny Pie's done using kind of AI, or no, not AI, program or whatever. He's just done that. So I have my own little web page to create my thumbnails, and that means I can create a thumbnail in about like 1 minute now. Anyway, just that is that something that would be of interest. Not that I can pimp out Benny, but anyway, I just thought I'd show you that. Speaking of which, on the Tochny website, there is a Join the Basement page where you can join Andrew Perpetual Project. So if you do have spare time, guys, and it does take time on a consistent basis as well, I know people have come and gone and helped and then found it's not for you. Not for them.
There's not many. You have to be a very weird person for this to be for you. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like it's such an intense workload. Even to do it passively, like not that much per day, it's still a lot, because like we have here, maybe I can show it to you. Let me see. So we have this tool. We have this tool, right? And like you can add events, like and then you have to like, so like it has some auto-filling features, and you can put like a geolocation over here, and so yeah, it can do this sort of thing, right? So so this is how we go through a video, right? So you can watch the video in the tool, and things happen, and then you write them down, etc. So so this is part of it, and learning how to do the tool correctly is a learning curve. I think I personally think it's not that hard, but there are a lot of just things to remember. So like, for example, we have like auto-filling things. So like if you type in like VI, it'll say like Vandal drone targeting infantry. So so things like that. So, and then if you write like VD, it's like a Vandal drone targeting a dugout. So so there's just all these different things. You have to learn all the different types of drones. There's like a vampire drone, a nemesis drone, Vandal drones, FPV drones, etc. I don't think it's that hard, but it's things that you have to learn. And just doing this properly is really like 90% of the struggle. And also like really noting the correct type of drone and the correct target are kind of two of the more important things. So yeah, this is just kind of the process that you would have to like commit to. There's also geolocation work, which is like a totally different animal, and that takes expertise. It can be learned, but it's a very time-consuming thing to learn. Although we do have a lot of tools at this point to help with geolocation. So like, for example, in our tool, we have an info page that will load hopefully, and it will tell you past geolocations. So like where the unit is in space. So and it will give you some information about the unit. Some of this is translated from the text post, and some of it is added with our other information that we have. So like this can help you geolocate. Like, for example, I really love geolocating this particular channel because it's in an area that I'm very interested in. It's in Krasnolimon area. It's in Kremena, basically. So I find that very interesting. I can show you on the map roughly where this is. They are right here, basically.
In the forest.
So
What's left of it.
This is a Russian Akhmat unit. So, yep.
And then that will
Anyways,
if you know it's that unit that's
so
releasing that data, then you know where to look more likely than just looking everywhere on the map. Yeah. I presume. I don't know if that's
you broke up pretty bad for me there.
So I was just saying that if you know where the unit is or which unit it is that's doing that, then you're going to be able to look in the right place on the map rather than having to look at the whole map.
Yeah. That's exactly right. So yeah, it limits where you have to look, and in like a unit, like this is a unit, so they're in one place. It really helps you because they'll stay in that place for like months at a time. Whereas if it's like an aggregator, it will tell you like a general area. Like some aggregators like only aggregate from one area. So like VoinDV, they'll all be around Velika Novosilka, but not necessarily in any one particular place. And then some other aggregators are like from everywhere in the whole world. So yeah, it does. Just knowing where things are is helpful. So
yeah, well, if people are up for helping, go to the Tochny website and find the Join the Basement tab, and then go and help them out. It's interesting. JR, who helps me with my mapping and stuff, he helped you for a bit a year and a half ago, I think, and he said that wow, just in the live chat, saying that you got some organizational things that have really improved in 1.5 years. So as you'd expect, right? So that's really cool.
Yeah, because like at first we had it was like exclusively everything done by hand, and you had to like learn everything yourself. And now we have like some tools to like speed up the process, to make efficiency. And like these tools are how we can do like 300 videos a day now, because we used to be doing everything by hand, and doing like 100 videos by hand is like a lot of work, but doing 100 videos in the tool is much less work. So
absolutely.
So yeah, this is how we log all of the events, and that's really what we do, is we log events. Like I think like people think that like we're really focusing on vehicles, but we're not really. Like some people think we only look at drones, and that's not true. Like we look at every event, and we track every unit, every event that we can find, and it's so much work.
And you add all sorts of different events to this. You can look at this on the map, and drone interceptions and unexploded. There's all this stuff that you've got on the map that is far beyond what I normally show. It just lots of things that you can look at. So it's an incredible amount of work that you guys do. Super
and we have easily the most geolocations out of anybody. Like other maps tend to have like 10, 15, 20,000 geolocations per year, and we're doing like 75, 100,000 per year. This year's probably going to be even higher than last year's. Last year was like 75,000, and this year probably going to be over 100,000. So we are geolocating like so much. So and a lot of the footage, like a lot of like Westerners in particular, they think that like only the stuff that goes to Twitter is what exists. But the stuff on Twitter is like less than 1% of everything that exists.
Telegram seems to be a pretty large source of what a lot of what you do, I guess. Signal and other places. But Telegram.
I mean, there's we are missing a lot of content from like TikTok and Instagram. If Telegram is probably like 40% of everything that gets posted. Like TikTok and Instagram have so much that we just don't look at. Audax, he looks at Instagram for Touretsk, because he only does Touretsk. So he like obsessively checks Instagram there, and Instagram is like one of his main sources of information. So I'm sure if we did that for everywhere in the whole world, Instagram would be our main source. But we all kind of hate Instagram with all of our heart, so we don't want to. It's so awful. Like, it's so terrible to work with. But yeah, a lot of like the young people, they love Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah. Tell me about it. My children are never off TikTok. That's probably because I'm spending all my time in here and need to be parenting them more. But there you go. Look, I did want to say, I just want to answer a question here. Why no full frontline update every day? I presume that's from me. My videos are long because there's more content and there's more geopolitical news than there ever was 2 years ago. What's going on with the US is incredibly important globally, and so therefore I spend a lot of time doing other videos and more interviews than I used to do, or more live streams I used to do. And so my frontline update has taken a back seat, but I still try and do it. Obviously, I was away for a week, so it's like an 11-day update. But that in itself, actually not doing an update every day is, I think, beneficial because it gives you much more of a view of what's really happening. So sometimes if you're doing it every day, you see a tiny move here, a tiny move there. You don't get the larger picture of, sometimes when I don't do one for like 4 or 5 days, you get a real sense of actually what's going on the front line. But anyway, that's just my opinion. But yeah, obviously it's largely dependent on Andrew Perpetua's mapping, which is incredible, and his mapping resource is such a wonderful resource. So thank you, Andrew, for everything you do. Is there anything, I was going to do a few super chats, but is there anything you wanted to say, Andrew, as a final kind of stuff?
No, I should go back to work now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, look, thanks for that short 10 minutes, mate. Really appreciate it. And I guess I'll catch up with you soon. But thanks so much, buddy. Keep up the good work.
Okay. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. That's absolutely brilliant to have him on board there. Really appreciate that. Such a valuable insight into what's going on the front line, and hopefully you guys appreciated that. I just want to do a couple more super chats. I want to go back to John Panciotti. Thank you so much for your incredible kindness there, and to Mark Biscu as well. Super generous as ever. And then also Michael McGlennon, just incredible kindness from you. Thank you very much indeed. And that's pretty much that. There was I did show you this, Mr. Lion Dust. Thanks to see you both on a stream. Appreciated there, matey. And then we have Javier Alvarez a couple of times. And Richard Demi, thank you very much for gifting those ATP Geopolitics memberships. You are a gentleman and a scholar, or something, officer and a gentleman nonetheless. So the only other thing I want to mention was this. And Dan Smith has caught this. I've got something to say about this, or I was going to tell you about it in a geopolitics video, but I don't think I'm going to have time to do one now. The Anonymous Collective, so that's the hacktivists, have released 10 terabytes of leaked data, including information on all businesses operating in Russia, all Kremlin assets in the West, pro-Russian officials, and more. That could be massive, right? That could be a massive bit of news there. There could be an awful lot of very sensitive information, very useful information to know about. I wonder if we get to find out about pro-Russian people within Western communities and business communities and political communities. I don't know. I don't know the full details of that yet. But that's a big old bit of news is what I'm guessing there. So yeah, incredible. Okay. Thank you very much for all of your support, guys. You truly are amazing. Can I just remind people of, yes, I salute Andrew too. I mean, he's a tireless worker. Honestly, just absolutely incredible. Daniel, stop being naughty. Thanks, Andrew. Never believe JP when he says 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm very bad at saying goodbye. I just love speaking to you guys. That's what it is. Yeah, so the last thing famous. That's the last thing I want to say. 20 minutes later. Please check out the the atpgeo.com/donate. There's been some more donations on there. Really appreciate that. We are trying to get that over the front line. I hope we can get at least one vehicle achieved. And that will be absolutely wonderful. I really should do like just a full-on live with someone to do some fundraising here. Thank you to Debbie Kennedy, Lion Cassens, again from today, Kathy Sommer. Thanks, Jonathan and Andrew, for your essential reporting on and support for Ukraine. Thank you. And Michael Finglass, Mike Hawes as well for today's ones, and obviously all the other people. What a wonderful donor wall we have there. Really incredible. Mark Bizque on there as well, as ever, as you can imagine. A total legend. But yeah, please help out that campaign if you can. That'll be fantastic. Hit the like button and all that kind of YouTubey stuff. Really important, so I'm told. Thanks to people like Benny Pie, thanks to JR, and someone I routinely forget to thank, Grimsoft, who does the I don't know if he still listens to me, but he does a Discord server. And please go and join the Discord there. I need to get on there more. It's just I have so many platforms operating so many different messaging services and whatever. I get a little bit lost on a daily basis. But for you guys, Discord is hopefully a really useful place for you guys to hang out and carry on the conversations and swap different sources and videos and whatnot. So please check out the Discord server, which is linked below. And yes, I do love a bit of a rant. So thank you for listening to that, Captain T. Obvious. Okay. In the meantime, guys, look, take care. You are all legends in your own way. And I appreciate you, Toodle Pips, and really very many thanks for those who helped out in the live stream by donating to the channel. It keeps the lights on. Honestly, very, very kind of you, right the way through all those people that I've mentioned today. And please spare a thought for the campaign as well if you can. Take care, y'all, and I will speak to you soon. Toodle Pips.